Hello everyone. সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ ইউএস এমবাসি ঢাকা এবং দেশ টিভির বিশেষ আয়োজন আ কনভারসেশন উইথ বাংলাদেশ বাংলাদেশের সাথে আড্ডা অনুষ্ঠানে। আপনারা জানেন এই মান্থলি শোতে আমরা আমেরিকান গেস্টদের সাথে আলোচনা করি বিভিন্ন ইস্যু নিয়ে এবং আমাদের সাথে থাকেন তরুণ প্যানেলিস্টরা। আমাদের আজকের আড্ডার বিষয় মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের নির্বাচন এবং গণতন্ত্র। আর এই ব্যাপারে আড্ডা দিতে আমাদের সাথে আছেন ইউএস এমবাসি ঢাকার দুজন ভেরি স্পেশাল গেস্ট, জোয়ানা Schenke, পলিটিক্যাল অফিসার, এবং রাজ Sriram, ভাইস কনসাল। Thank you very much for coming to our show and welcome to a conversation with Bangladesh.
Thank you. আমি এখানে আসি খুব খুশি।
Raj.
ধন্যবাদ সাবির ভাই, এই প্রোগ্রামে অংশ নিয়ে আমাকে খুব খুশি হয়।
আমরা অনেক খুশি, and by the way both of yours Bangla is excellent. আর আমাদের সাথে আছেন ইয়াং প্যানেলিস্ট যারা ইউএস ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ স্টেটের অ্যালামনাই প্রোগ্রামে গিয়েছিলেন। Welcome to a conversation with Bangladesh. So the American election is just around the corner. So tell us more about the election. That how do the Americans elect their president?
So I'm assuming the panelists have seen the debate. Have you followed the debate? Yes. Yes. The U.S. presidential election is it takes place every 4 years, and it is. There are a few steps to it. One is deciding which there are two major parties in the U.S., the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and the first step is deciding who the nominees are from each of these parties. And the elections take place every 4 years. And the way we elect the president is through an indirect popular vote. So every state, the people in each state vote for their choice for the presidential candidate. And then the state's electoral representatives then cast their vote for the nominee based on the popular vote of the state. So it's an indirect system.
So like there's this electoral vote and the popular vote. So how does that work? Like, so if someone gets more popular vote than the electoral vote, so what happens then?
Well, that's one of the tensions that people designed into our electoral system on purpose. They wanted to combine the power of small states and large states, and you'll find that as a recurring theme in our Constitution.
Panelists, আপনাদের কাছে জানতে চাবো যে any thoughts about US election? আপনারা রাজ বললো যে you have followed the debates, so please, any thoughts?
I have a question. My question is how the debate works, like why it is necessary to have the debates.
Well, we have 3 presidential debates before the election and 1 vice presidential debate. And I think it's an important part of our democratic system that all of the voters can see how the person reacts to important questions, how they would react to important policy challenges facing the nation. And there are some undecided voters still don't know who they want to vote for president, and so hearing them answer tough questions helps them to decide.
Thank you, Joanna. So Raj, do you think that the debates influence the voters to a great extent?
When the televised debates first started in the in the 60s, 1960s, they had a big influence on the outcome of the election. The first televised debate was between Richard Nixon and JFK, and this was the first time almost the entire country tuned in to the elections because this had never happened. And in the radio, when the radio broadcast happened, people thought one candidate won the election, and the televised debate, a different candidate won the debate. The debate. And over the years, it's become, as my colleague Joanna says, more a forum for candidates to draw in the independent voters. Every party has got its own core group of supporters, but you have a big group of independents who are, we call the center, right? And they could be swayed by both parties, and that's the objective. Now there's another part of the debate process which we should not overlook as well, which is the run-up to the presidential nomination. The Republicans this time had to choose among a group of 10 to 12 candidates, and there the nature of the debates are very different because here you're appealing to the core cadre of your party. And the core values of your party. So there, the debates are much sharper and less to the center, but more to the right or the left. Whereas in the presidential debate, it's more about appealing to the entire nation as a whole, and that's the objective.
And it also helps the voters to make their decisions. Now, my question to the panelists: do you think that in Bangladesh we should have similar debates?
Yes, we could have. It's better. Because if we look at those debates that they have done over there, they show their strategies. Like if you have seen those debates, President Obama talked about his strategies, how he will cut taxes, how he can make improvement for the country, what he can do. And again, the other person who was opposition,
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney showed that when Obama promised that he will cut the taxes, and Obama promised that he will save the country from the deficit of $4 trillion, I believe. And he have a website where he showed that how he can do that. But he couldn't. After these 4 years, he couldn't. He haven't done it. And Mitt Romney have asked that if you can do that, why didn't you do that within 4 years? Now you are saying that you will do it again. So that's how the debate shows the clear vision. Like it clears everything, what you are doing, what you can do. So a debate should be here for our politicians too, because they say a lot of stuff, but actually in reality they don't do anything.
So like any other thoughts, like do you think that our politicians will be able to have a constructive debate?
I think we should definitely move in that direction, but there are a lot of issues, like say for example bribery. If we can exclude that part, I think it's very much possible to clear the air.
Joanna, it is said that the Americans, the voters turnout is really low, but here in Bangladesh, election is seen as a celebration. So what are your thoughts?
Well, you're right to say that voter turnout in the United States is comparatively low with Bangladesh. But I would say that in certain elections we also have a celebratory atmosphere. I'm thinking back to the presidential election in 2008. I was in graduate school in Austin, Texas, and everyone has debate watching parties, election watching parties where you watch the results come in and you wait until about 11 o'clock or midnight to find out what the tally of the electoral votes is. And when they declare the president to be Barack Obama, everyone just streamed out into the streets, went out to restaurants and cafes, and the police actually had to come in and close off the streets downtown to car traffic just because there were so many people streaming around and just celebrating. It was like an impromptu parade. So that was definitely a celebratory atmosphere, and that was also the highest voter turnout for a presidential election, I think, in decades.
So like, is there any campaigns to encourage the voters to vote?
Absolutely. I think a few of my panelists talked in great pride about being a part of the 2008 elections, and that was a big factor, the youth coming out to vote. And I think that's a new trend that started because of the use of social media, using tools such as Facebook and Twitter. You're able to get the message out to like-minded people and encourage people to come out and remind people to come out to vote. And you're starting to see that. We saw the highest turnout among the youth in the 2008 presidential elections. We hope that trend continues. The young people in Bangladesh especially have a lot to be proud about. You are very active, very knowledgeable about politics. The majority of the country has been born after 1971, so you have a big role to play in how your country develops.
Well, one factor, too, was that the candidates created policies that were of particular relevance to young voters.
Great point.
They talked about college loans. Going to college in the United States can be very expensive. And they talked about other issues that spoke to youth to try to get them to come out and cast their votes. So, I mean, is that something that's happening in Bangladesh? Are the candidates speaking on issues that pertain directly to young voters?
Well, if we see back to our last election, we can see that one of our parties actually said that we should turn out, we should go to the election and vote for one of our rights, and the thing that happened in 1971. So actually they have some policies to encourage the young voters and other voters too to turn out themselves in the election to vote. And actually you have said that election is like a celebration in our country.
So I understand that when you did your exchange program in Washington State, that you were also involved in campaigning for the President Obama. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, of course. I was in 2008 and 9 batch when I was there when Obama got elected. So I had the opportunity to work with the campaign. So I had to do I had to call people and ask what's their opinion about Obama. So it was really interesting how I was getting the negative and positive impact from them. Also, like Bangladesh, like here in Bangladesh, I saw like flyers and posters everywhere in the street, in the cars, also like in the malls, even in the school. Like my friends, they made songs about Obama. Like they were singing like on the in the hallways and then in the class. It was really interesting. But the thing I noticed that my friends and everyone was really excited about the election. But my friends who were 18, they were really excited, but they didn't really vote. I was asking them, so are you going to vote? They said, I'm not really sure, maybe. And I asked why. So I don't know, but yeah, I do support him, or I do support the candidates. But they were not like excited to vote, but they were really excited about the election.
The campaign. Yeah. So this is quite interesting. But my question to you all is like, would you do similar campaign here in Bangladesh election?
For me, I might, I don't want to join politics, or I don't want to do any campaign for them, but there is people out there, there is youth out there who want to do that. I know that. I have friends who are involved in politics. I have friends who wants to do something, like in what is happening in USA. There is people out there that want to do it.
দর্শক ছোট্ট একটা বিরতি নিচ্ছি, সাথে থাকুন, ফিরছি কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যেই। স্বাগত আরেকবার কনভারসেশন উইথ বাংলাদেশ, বাংলাদেশের সাথে আড্ডা অনুষ্ঠানে। Joanna, my question to you is, what according to the Americans is a free, fair and transparent election?
Well, we always talk about free, fair and transparent elections all over the world, but especially in our own system, we take a lot of measures to ensure that everyone has access to not only be able to vote, but all the candidates have equal access to explain to the voters what their policies are and how they would govern were they to be elected. So we have rules that every candidate has equal access time to radio and television, that everyone gets a chance to participate in the debates, and there's limits on how much money people can spend to advertise. So that's one way that we try to make equal access, make them fair for the candidates. And then for voters as well, we try to ensure that everyone has equal access to come to the polling stations. If you've been reading the news about the United States, you'll see that certain states are trying to enact voter identification laws, which would make it more difficult for some people to participate in the elections. So that's one kind of argument that we're having internally about how to keep the elections safe, but also equal access for voters. So like when you go to a local library or school or a church to vote, you'll see that there's rules where people can't follow you inside the polling station trying to convince you to vote for their candidate. They have to wait outside so that you go in and you have a safe environment, free from coercion, and you can choose, and your ballot is secret. We have now electronic voting systems, so that's another measure that we've taken to make sure that your vote as you cast it doesn't get changed.
Right, and Raj, I know you have an interesting background. Your parents are from India, so you have experienced election in India, I guess,
right.
And also you have experienced election in US. So how do you compare the two elections?
Sure. I think the first elections I remember were in Hyderabad when the Congress Party, Janata Party, in that time was trying to come back to power after the emergency in India. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had declared an emergency. And India was still a very new democracy, and you would find people standing in lines for 4 or 5 hours. And my parents and I was 8 years old at that time, we stood in line for 5 hours. For them to cast their votes. And in those days, you had your thumbprint on ink, and I still think in a lot of places, states in India, we still do that, and you cast your vote based on that. My mother, after four hours, she found out that someone had already cast her vote, and my father could cast his vote. In the meantime, a big fight broke out with knives and people arguing about results. So it's an interesting process. What I did take away, I mean, when I look back on it now, is it was a working democracy. You had parties that were in power and that lost power. Yes, were there flaws in it? Absolutely, but the democracy worked. And then when I came to the US to go to graduate school, it was a very interesting experience, but again, a case for a healthy democracy. I saw my first experience, my first year, it was President Bill Clinton running against the Republican candidate Bob Dole, and you had a third-party candidate that had emerged for the first time, Ross Perot. It was very interesting about how the emergence of a third-party candidate changed the dynamic of the election. Then the 2000 elections were decided by 540 votes in the state of Florida, and it was fascinating just seeing these things. But a lot of it really went back to what Joanna said, which is, my colleague, the elections provide a platform for people who otherwise do not have an opportunity to influence how the government takes care of your needs. And you have an opportunity, whether you, and going back to our friends in the panel, to be involved in the government doesn't mean to join politics. You could do something as simple as getting you and your friends, no matter which party or who they support, to come out and vote in the elections. And that's a big part of the process. And you cannot lose faith. You may have instances where you may get angry about certain things, but you cannot lose faith in the process. And I would love to see you all take an active part in that sense.
Absolutely, and also like even in Bangladesh, we do practice democracy. It's a matter of that how well do you practice, and Bangladesh is just 4 years old, so Bangladesh is learning, as in like in United States, they have been practicing democracy for like more than 200 years. Mm-hmm. So like what Bangladesh can learn from US in terms of democratic practices?
Well, I think it's interesting that the electoral processes in both countries have become long. Everyone's already saying now, even though we're over a year out from the elections in Bangladesh, that we're entering election season. And it's become the same in the United States. So I think Bangladesh has already learned that lesson. As soon as the president wins one term, they start campaigning to try and get reelected for their second four-year term. And so that's kind of an interesting parallel, that having these timelines set out in advance, you're always in campaign mode and you're always in election season. I think that Bangladesh is learning a lot of lessons that we've learned in the United States, getting youth involved in politics.
Getting the youth involved is certainly one thing Bangladesh could learn from the U.S. The other thing that's interesting about U.S. politics is the role of the opposition. They play a very constructive role in the government. Policies, just because you don't control the Senate or the Congress, or your candidate did not get elected to the president, doesn't mean that you don't have a say in the policy. The policies are done with collaboration and negotiations, and that is part of a healthy democracy, and one that we hope developing and fast-growing countries like Bangladesh with a thriving democracy could learn.
বিরতি আরো একবার সাথেই থাকুন, ফিরছি কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যেই। স্বাগত আরো একবার কনভারসেশন উইথ বাংলাদেশ, বাংলাদেশের সাথে আড্ডা অনুষ্ঠানে। আজকে আড্ডা দিচ্ছি গণতন্ত্র এবং মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের নির্বাচন নিয়ে। And we have a mixed panelists here. Some of you are voters and will be voting in the next election. So let us know your thoughts about the next election, about your voting. Like, are you excited?
Yes, definitely. I'm excited. I will be doing my vote for the first time, and I'm definitely excited. I just hope that from the political teams or who are over there, whatever promise they make, they at least try to go close to that promise. What's happening in here is they make big promises and then they're not even close. It's very disappointing, and people get hurt from them. If you even look at the if you look at the bridge, the Padma Bridge, it's the biggest topic in town right now. It was promised to be done, and there was definitely some corruption and stuff was there, and it didn't happen. And my opinion is that whatever you promise, at least try to make it happen or go close to that. And we never lose our faith. If you look at the election, if you look at the politicians, every time there is two big parties, they are coming, either BNP or either Awami League. And we have faith on them. We have our faith. That's why we vote. And we want them to do something for us.
Even though I'm not a voter, but I'm really excited about the next election. And when I go out and hang out with my friends, I see them talking about the elections and the parties that are competing with each other. And if you see and go and meet different types of people, you'll see that they are also talking and discussing about upcoming elections, what the current government has done and what the opposition parties are saying. So you can actually differentiate and contrast those parties and their promises they made and what they have done. So I can see that the voters in Bangladesh are much more active than the political parties. So we should actually do some campaign. Rather than supporting one political party, we should get the voters know what their rights are. Right. And the students and the young people should step out, because if you look back in Bangladesh history, you can see that major changes have been done by the students and young people because they have stepped out. And we should make them aware of what the election is and what are their rights, what and how they can practice transparent, free democracy. So that would be my suggestion and also my thoughts. Thank you.
And this is quite interesting. Though the Bangladeshi youth are apathetic about the politics, they're very aware about their voting rights and the overall election process. So how would you compare the youth of Bangladesh and the youth of United States on this basis?
I would say it's comparable in the sense of the youth in both countries are very passionate. And it's a matter of what gets people to come and vote are the party's message relevant to the concerns of the youth. As my colleague Joanna mentioned, I'll be talking about issues that matter to the youth: student loans, education, jobs when you come out of school or college. The political parties have to tailor the message to the youth, because they do care about politics, but they need to know, hey, is there a point to my voting? Are my rights going to be understood, and does it matter to the parties?
But even if the youth are very interested in the issues and they're excited about a candidate, we heard that that doesn't always translate into going and casting your vote on voting day. And I think in that sense, for me personally, it was my parents who instilled that voting behavior with me. You mentioned that your parents took you to vote with them when you were 9. Well, they didn't take me when I was 9 years old. They took me after I turned 18. And I voted in a local election for city council members and for other people in Harris County. And those don't get the same sort of attention as an excitement as a presidential debate. But it was very easy. They told me how to register. When you go get your driver's license, you can register to vote after you're 18. So I am sure that's different in every country. But then I got my voter registration card in the mail. I had to sign it, and I took it to the local community college. It was like a 5-minute drive. My mom, my dad, and I went together, and I went in the booth and used the machine for the first time. It's a little counterintuitive, and I'm growing up with computers, so I can only imagine how it feels for some people who aren't familiar with the technology. But they have people there you can ask questions to if you're confused by anything. It was very straightforward, very fun. And then I remember we went out to lunch afterwards, and that was my first voting experience. And pretty soon after that, I went away to a different state for college, but I kept my voter registration in Texas, and so I'd get absentee ballots so I could mail them back in. And that's what I just did here for this election. Living in Bangladesh, we had to get our ballots and fill them out on paper by hand and mail them back home to the United States. But I think that culture is now instilled in me that I want to vote every possible
Right, and
chance
also
I get.
I believe that you learn a lot from your family as well. Do your family, do you have discussions in your family about the election, about voting?
Yeah, definitely. We do have family discussions. I mean, starting with the elderly people and the kids, we all have like roundtable discussions. Not roundtable, like maybe we are at dinner or lunch and then we talk about the upcoming political situation, what's going on in the country and how we should vote the correct candidate and what they're up to.
আড্ডার এই পর্যায়ে নিতে হচ্ছে ছোট্ট একটা বিরতি। আমাদের সাথেই থাকুন, ফিরবো কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যে। Welcome back to a conversation with Bangladesh. দেখছেন বাংলাদেশের সাথে আড্ডা অনুষ্ঠান। Did either of you ever run for an election while you were in school, college? Any experience you want to share with the viewers?
Sure. I don't know how exciting of a story it is because I ran unopposed, but I was the team captain of my high school soccer team. And actually, the reason that I wanted to run for it was because I'd been on the team for all 4 years. And I was the only girl who'd been on the team the entire time. So nobody else decided that they wanted to run against me. And I think that's definitely the most certain way to win, is if you have no opponent.
But again, like, is it fun to win without competition in an election?
No, it wasn't as fun because there was no suspense, and we definitely didn't have any debates for who would make the best soccer team captain. But I think it also shows you know, that if you're willing, if you're dedicated to a cause, if you're persistent, and you show up for 4 years to play at every game, then that goes into building a good background, a good resume, and then people said, okay, yeah, she should be president or team captain. So,
Raj, any memories?
Well, very simple elections such as secretary of university associations and treasurers and so on and so forth.
And you won?
Yeah, I think one of them was unopposed, and the other one did have an election. But this winning or losing, I think part of the process is participating. If the fact that you ran unopposed meant someone else chose not to run and could have run, and I think that's part of participating in the electoral process, being able to say, hey, I care about this, and I can actually. And I could do this better than anyone else, so I'm actually going to run for it as opposed to just cast a vote.
So any questions you want to ask to our guests?
Well, I have 2 questions for the 2 of the guests. First question would be for Mr. Raj. Sir, you have lived in India and also in the United States, and you are currently staying at Bangladesh. So India and the United States are the 2 largest democracies in this world, and Bangladesh is currently improving really fast. So how would you differentiate and contrast the democracies in these 3 countries, and what are the good things that you can say about these 3 countries?
That's a great question. I think the first thing I have to say is all the 3 countries have vibrant democracies. And the fact is, in Bangladesh, what strikes me about the democratic processes, there are aspects that other countries can even learn from it. In India, and just like in Bangladesh, you have parties in power, but parties that get voted out of power. And those are things that strike me as a case for where people, when they find that their rights have not been respected, to what you said in the panel, that yeah, you have a choice. You can go turn up in the elections and vote. The U.S. is also a similar democracy where candidates really over the 4 years and think about, can I live up to my promises, and not just for my party, but for the entire country. And if I don't, there is a very little chance of me coming back to power. And that's a big leverage we as the voting public have, and I've seen this in evidence in all the 3 democracies.
My question would be for Ms. Joanna, is that you lived in the United States, and when I was living in the United States, I saw that people are much more localized. They mostly care about their cities, like what is going on in their city and neighboring cities and towns. Probably mostly they will go as far as states. So when you look at Bangladesh, it's kind of different, because different parts of Bangladeshi people will know and try to know what is going on there and discuss about it. So do you think there is something we can actually communicate and make the people of United States aware of not only their neighboring towns and cities, but also nationally, what is going on in different states, and also the foreign policies of the United States to the local people.
Well, you touched on a very important difference between our two countries. The United States is much more decentralized, and people do take state-level politics and city-level politics very seriously. And I think that that's because the states have such different political personalities. We've got very conservative states and very liberal states, and we've given the states a lot of powers to decide their own policies. And so that's how different states have different universities, different healthcare systems, different taxation structures, and so those issues matter to people. So they take their state-level elections very seriously. And in Bangladesh, the system is much more centralized. Your country's the size of one of our states, of Iowa, actually, where Ambassador Mosina is from. And so it's much easier to look at the country as a whole. But the United States has twice the population of Bangladesh and 50 different state-level structures. And what we're actually encouraging at the embassy for Bangladesh is that they become a little bit more decentralized. We've got a lot of programs to strengthen democratic and local governance in place, where we're working with, all the way down to the union levels on creating democratic leaders who are interested in championing issues that are relevant for very small localities. So I think you hit on an important difference, and we could both come towards the middle a little bit, where the United States could become more outward-looking, and Bangladesh could also become more decentralized.
Thank you very much. So any final thoughts? Raj?
Thank you for having us. It's been great to listen to the youth of Bangladesh and your thoughts and your excitement about the democratic process here. And it's a conversation that one needs to continue having, and we're looking forward to seeing the next evolution of politics in this country.
Well, I'm very excited about both of the upcoming elections in the United States in November and in Bangladesh, I guess late 2013, early 2014. It's a very interesting time in the democracies for both countries, and so I was really glad to be able to discuss both of them with you today.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you very much, panelists, for your thoughts. Thank you for coming to our show. দর্শক, আজকের মতো আড্ডা এখানেই শেষ করব। পরের মাসে আবারও দেখা হবে। সবাই ভালো থাকবেন আর দেশের সাথেই থাকুন।